Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Today we have returning guest Tom with us, and what we're going to show you how to do today is install a Sherpa Quandary Roof Rack on Ton's Lexus GX470. When Ton and I were in North Carolina partnering with East Coast Gear Supply to bring you those awesome differential rebuild videos, a really cool guy named Jamie O'Brien contacted me via Facebook, and he was asking if we can get together and have a little meetup. And I said, sure, that would be cool. So Jamie set it up. We went to dinner, and then we went to a shop called TEQ Customs, TEQ Customs. And while we were at the shop and hanging out and talking with all the other Toyota enthusiasts, drinking beer, having a good time, Tom went into the shop and was kind of checking out their operation, and he noticed that they carry Sherpa roof racks. And he noticed there was actually one for a GX470 in the shop. So he talked to them and he was able to negotiate a deal on it in exchange for us making a video of the install. So that's how this video came to be. So since I mentioned TEQ Customs, I'd like to tell you a little bit about these guys. It's owned by this guy Hunter, and it's managed by his buddy Miles. And they started the business by just doing custom headlights. They rebuild the stock lights and put super bright LEDs in them, and then they could do all the cool custom things that you could do to those lights. Just like any other custom headlight maker in the industry, they can do it all for you, and they can customize it to the way you want. But then they moved to a bigger shop, and now they do a whole bunch of different things. They have a storefront where you can go in there and buy things you need, like suspension stuff, rooftop tents, roof racks, a whole host of different things. And then they started doing jobs for people, so they could do suspension work, they can do some light modification work, they install roof racks, they install bumpers, they do a whole lot of different things. So if you are in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, or you're willing to travel there, they are a quality shop if you have a Toyota or Lexus vehicle that you need some work done to it. So check them out. In addition to TEQ Customs sponsoring this project, Sherpa also sponsored it by hooking up Ton with some really good deals on all the accessories he bought. And you'll be seeing all those things very soon. So with all that said, we're gonna get everything laid out on a table for you so you can see all the parts that make up the Sherpa roof rack. And then we're gonna show you all the additional accessories that Ton bought for the roof rack. Here we go. All right, we've got it all unboxed, and I'm gonna show you what all this stuff is. I'll start off right here. These are all the cross members for the Sherpa rack. There's 9 crossbars. We've got the side plates of the roof rack. We've got the wind fairing that goes on the front. We have 6 feet that support the roof rack on the roof right here. We've got these 6 rubber blocks that go in between the feet and the roof of the truck. We've got all the hardware here. We've got these 12 larger bolts with these rubberized washers that affix the roof rack feet to the roof itself. So those long bolts go through the feet, and they go through these rubber blocks and then into the female holes on the roof itself. You've got some longer button head bolts, and all these bolts and the washers that will go with it are to affix the cross members to the side plates. Then you have some shorter hex bolts, and these are to affix the feet. They go in these holes right here, and utilizing these channel nuts to affix the feet to the roof rack cross members. And then finally, we have these short button head bolts, and these are to affix the fairing on the front to the front of the side plates. So that's everything in relation to the actual roof rack. But as you can see on this table right here, we have a bunch of other stuff. First of all, we've got these 3 boxes Two are a little bit longer and not as high. And then this bottom one is a little bit shorter and taller. There's some brackets that are needed to mount the boxes, and that's this stuff right here. These brackets right here are for mounting traction boards. These ones right here are to mount an awning. These mounts right here are to affix rotapacks. This mount right here is for a high lift jack. We have these smiley face mounts, and these are so you can put straps through to tie down stuff. So he's got several of these. This one right here is to be able to mount an antenna. This packet right here is to be able to mount a shovel. And then these ones right here are the mounting plates so you can mount all these rock lights. The last bracket we have is this bracket, which enables you to be able to mount this water port water tank that you can put on the side of the roof rack so you can do whatever you need, some washing, or maybe you could take a shower with it. Now, looking at all this stuff, my question to Ton was, do you really think you're going to be able to fit all this stuff on that roof rack? And I don't think there's any way they're going to be able to fit all three of those boxes, max tracks, rotapacks, a partridge in a pear tree, kitchen sink. I don't think it's going to work. So I think Ton's going to have to choose what he wants to put on the roof rack for a particular trip. But we'll see. We'll give it the old college try to see if we could actually fit all these accessories onto this Sherpa rack. One thing I wanted to mention before we get started is there are some videos in existence for installing a Sherpa rack on a GX470. One video comes right from Sherpa themselves, and it's a pretty good video, about 15 minutes, that walks you through the process. The one thing that they don't show in that one video is the removal of the OEM roof rack, but they do show that in another video. In addition to the Sherpa videos, there is another guy that did an install of the Sherpa rack on a GX470, and the one thing I gleaned from that guy's video, which is using a little silicone before putting the feet onto the roof rack, just for extra insurance to prevent water intrusion into the truck. So I will link those videos in the video description if you'd like to see those. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get the OEM roof rack off of Ton's GX470. Here we go. The roof rack bolts that affix the roof rack to the roof are hidden behind decorative covers. There's a cover in the front, there's a cover in the middle, and then there's a cover in the rear, and we have to pop those off. I referenced the factory service manual information on how to remove these, and they suggest putting some protective tape in here so when you're prying with a pry tool, you're not going to damage the paint. I'm not going to put any tape on his paint. I'm just going to use a rag to lever against, so I'm not levering right up against the paint. So I've got these trim removal tools that I have in a kit that I bought on Amazon. I'll link it in the video description. And I'm going to get in between the rubber and the plastic, and then I'm going to pry up a little bit and see if I can pop it free. There we go. I got one. Got another one. Okay, I think I might be able to just remove it with my hands now. And if you're going to be possibly reusing these, just be as gentle as possible, but that's what it looks like. And then you could see the two bolts it exposes right here. So now we're going to go to the middle one and remove that. So this middle one, it's just going to pop outward. It can't really pop up. I'll get in here in between the rubber and the plastic, and then I'm just going to pry out. And there it is. With that cover off, you can see one bolt going in from the side that we're going to have to remove. Now let's go to the rear. Same thing, get the trim tool in between the rubber and the plastic and start popping it free. So here's the rear cover off, and you can see the two bolts it exposes right here. All right, we're gonna do the exact same on the other side. We have all 6 covers off. Now we're gonna start removing the bolts. They're all 12mm heads, and I'm gonna use my Milwaukee cordless ratchet, short extension, and a 12mm socket to zip them out. One thing to note that was a warning from Sherpa was that you want to equally release these bolts because there is a plate that's on the underside of the roof underneath the headliner, and if you zip one out all the way, then you start zipping out the other one, the plate can end up twisting, and then you're going to have a difficult time getting that plate realigned. So loosen one side a little bit, loosen the other, and just go back and forth, gradually loosening them all the way, and then finally get the bolts out. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. They're a little stiff. That's what she said. And this is what they look like. And you'll notice there's some type of thread sealant on this. And the reason why they probably put a sealant on there is to help prevent water getting through the threads. It also could be just to make sure that the bolt can't come loose, but I sort of think that the main reason is to prevent water being able to travel down the threads and into the headliner. For this one, you don't have to worry about any plate or anything. You could just zip this out. For these two rear bolts, I'm going to use the same technique I used for the front bolts. I'm going to loosen them gradually. And these look like they're the same length as the two front bolts. All right, we're just going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. We're going to lift this sucker off. It's obviously going to be easier with two people, so we are going to utilize two people. First, what I would suggest is getting up on here and just kind of lifting the feet off because they're a little bit sticky. So just make sure that the feet are broken free from the roof, and then we'll stand back on the ground and lift it up. Is it loose on your side too?
Yeah, it is.
All right, here we go. So now with the roof rack off, you can see the bolt holes and you can see all this debris here. What we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna clean up this area really well so the rubber feet of the Sherpa rack get a nice seal with the roof so no water intrusion happens. What I want to use to do some of the cleaning is an air gun, and I'm going to want to put the bolts back into the bolt holes. We don't want any of that debris that we're blowing out of this channel to go into the bolt holes. This is one of the middle feet on the roof rack. You can see all this debris here. This is hiding a couple bolts. So I'll push some of this stuff away here. And you can see one bolt here and one bolt there. So after I blow this debris out of the way, I'm gonna get my ratchet and I'm gonna remove these two bolts to remove this bracket off the top of the roof because we won't be needing this either. It's been raining in California lately, so I'm actually blowing a little mud on the top of this truck, which isn't ideal, but it is what it is. So now that we blew out the area for these middle mounts, I'm going to remove this bracket. The bracket is held on with 10mm bolts. Okay, and this thing should come up. And then now we can get in here with some cleaner and some rags and clean this channel out too. Now that we have the mounting areas of the roof rack channels cleaned out really well, we're gonna work on the next step, which is getting these rubber blocks ready to be put on top of the roof. They have these metal sleeves that slide into the holes of the rubber block, and we wanna remove those and install those first on the roof rack and then slide the rubber block over the top. So what I found is a good tool to push those sleeves out is a 3/8 inch ratchet extension. And I'm gonna do the same with the other 5 blocks. So the reason why we push these sleeves out of the rubber blocks is you want to accurately get these metal sleeves around the plastic inserts in the roof. So you grab the metal sleeve and you slide it over the top of the plastic sleeve. Now you'll probably notice that on some of them, it's not gonna slide over very easily. So one thing you can do is you could slide the sleeve over one of the bolts and then screw the bolt in a little bit So by pulling up on the top of the bolt head, you could give it some opposing force while you're pushing the metal sleeve over the top of the plastic sleeve. Okay, I finally got that one seated, and then now I could take the bolt out. One thing that we're gonna do as extra precaution to prevent water intrusion into the roof headliner is we're gonna put a little bit of silicone down around the plastic sleeve and then put the metal sleeve over the top. This is just personal preference. Sherpa's instructions don't say to do this, but we're gonna go ahead and do it just for that extra insurance. So just putting a decent bead around the plastic sleeve, and we're gonna do that with every one of these holes. All right, so using that trick that I just shared with you, I'm gonna put the sleeve over the bolt, get the bolt in there, screw it in a little bit, and then fit the metal sleeve over the plastic sleeve. Okay, that's fully seated. And then I'm gonna do the same with the other one. And then now we gotta get our rubber block and slide it over. These rubber blocks, the holes are off center. They're gonna be closer to one edge of the rubber block. And the side where the holes are closest to, that faces inboard towards the middle of the roof. If you did it the other way, it wouldn't fit right. So it could really only go on one way. So then you slide it over the metal sleeves and push it in place. And there it is there. You'll notice that, see these plastic rain gutter channels? These things will slide. So if they happen to slide in your way, you could just slide them the direction out of your way and then afterwards slide it back. So just know that. So these 6 mounting feet are marked. For the front one, it's labeled with an F. For the middle one, it's labeled with an M. And for the rear one, it's labeled with an R. Now, the way you figure out which one goes on what side of the roof rack is they have a little notch. You can see it right here. It's like a little bevel cut out, and that's supposed to face towards the front of the vehicle. You'll notice on the middle ones, there is no front or rear of the mount, so these can go on either side. But definitely for the front ones and for the rear ones, you'll see that it has a notch cut out to indicate that side faces forward, so you know which bracket goes on what side of the roof rack, either driver or passenger. To affix the feet to the roof rack, you're going to use one of these longer hex bolts, and you're going to use one of these rubberized washer, and the rubber side faces downward. So you just slide it up onto the bolt, just like that. Again, with the rubber side facing downward. The next step is we're going to get the feet attached to the cross members. So I have 3 cross members set out, and when you put these feet onto the cross members, you want to get the orientation right. I have my 2 front feet, and I'm going to attach them to one of the cross members. What you'll need to attach the feet to the cross members are these T-nuts, the flat washers, and the bolts. So these T-nuts can just slide in just like so. The rounded side faces into the channel first, and you could just rotate it in place. It doesn't really matter which way you put it in. You'll see that the bolt hole is on one side, but you would want to mirror the other one that you put in. So you could just rotate it in place just like that. And then you could do the same with the other one. And then I'll do the same on the other side. With the T-nuts inside the channel of the cross member, now we're going to place the foot in position and get it started with the short hex bolt and a flat washer. This is the proper orientation. The side that attaches to the roof needs to be sticking outboard. You wouldn't want to put it like this. Just place it on and line up the hole and get it started. When putting these on, you want them still loose so you can slide it back and forth and be able to align it with the roof rack holes once you put these cross members up on top. So just leave them a little bit loose so you can slide them. One thing I wanted to share with you that I noticed about these T-nuts, they have a sprung ball bearing here, and that helps create a little tension when you put it into the roof rack channel. You can orient the bolt hole in the proper location to align the bolt. So If you see when I slide this in, you can see how it's off kilter. I won't be able to get the bolt lined up like that. But if you press down and get it to where that ball bearing is sprung against the channel, now it locks the T-nut in position to where the bolt hole is nicely lined up and facing square. So just know that you can manipulate it to where you can have an easier time lining up the bolt hole by utilizing that little sprung ball bearing. All right, we have our front cross member, middle cross member, and the rear cross member, all with the feet attached. Remembering what I said, how you need to orient the feet, we have both of the front feet with the notch facing the same direction. So notch facing forward and notch facing forward. For the middle one, it doesn't matter what side the feet go on. They can go on either side because they're not side specific. For the rear ones, they are side specific. So again, you have to have the notches both facing the same side. So they're both facing forward on both these feet. So now we're going to carry these over to the truck and we're going to get them mounted up onto the roof with the supplied hardware. For more extra insurance, we're going to put a little bit of silicone on the bolt before we slide it into the hole. So you just line up the foot with the rubber pad and slide it in place and get the bolt started. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same with the other one. Okay, they're both started. Now, in order to have an easier time tightening up these bolts, if you kept the channel loose, you can slide it out of your way. Now you can easily get in here with a ratchet and a socket and tighten these up. These bolts are 13 millimeter, and I'm just going to tighten them up with this short 3/8 ratchet. I don't have a torque spec for you. Just use your best judgment. I'm choosing to not crank on these too much because I don't want to strip them, and the way I look at it, if you use a big enough lever, you could just keep on compressing that rubber block. So as soon as it feels pretty snug with this short ratchet, I'm going to call it good. Okay, both the bolts are feeling snug. So now we're going to do the same procedure for the middle cross member and the rear cross member. We're first going to put down some silicone. We're going to fit the metal sleeves over the plastic sleeve. We're going to put the rubber block in place, and then we're going to come in with the cross member, set the feet on top of the rubber block, get a little silicone on the bolts, slide the bolts in place, and cinch them up with the ratchet. One thing that I noticed was helpful was using a small adjustable wrench to help me push the metal sleeves over the plastic sleeves. So I screw the bolt in, I'm pulling up, and then I have the jaws adjusted just to where they can clear the sides of the bolt. And then I could pull up on the bolt while pushing down on the adjustable wrench, and then I could pop the metal sleeve in place over the plastic sleeve, because some of them might get a little bit mangled and you're going to have a hard time doing it with your fingers. So utilizing a technique like this will help you pop that metal sleeve over the plastic sleeve. Other than going by feel and using your best judgment, a visual indicator to let you know you have these mounting bolts tight enough is by looking at the rubberized washers underneath the bolt head. When the rubber of the washer is spread out past the metal part of the washer and it looks like it's getting a nice flat connection to the bracket, that'll let you know that you have it tight enough, and then this way there will be no water intrusion through the bolt holes. Now that we have the front, middle, and rear cross members properly attached to the roof, now what we want to do is we want to get the cross members equally sticking out on each side. From watching the Sherpa video, which has been very helpful for this install, they already have some values that we can use to get them centered. So for the measurement, what you're going to be measuring from is the inside of the foot. You'll hook it there, and then you're going to measure out to the edge of the cross member, And for the front, you want it to be 3 3/4 approximately. We're gonna have to double check the value that Sherpa gave and just make sure that's accurate. So we make that measurement and then we go to the other side and see if we get the same measurement. If we don't, then we're gonna have to tweak it a little bit in or out until we get an equal measurement on both sides. So for the measurement for the front, the Sherpa video said 3 3/4. For the middle one, 4 5/8, and for the rear one, 5 1/2. So that's a good starting point for you. And maybe depending on the model, there might be some slight differences in the roof line. Who knows? So that's just a good starting point. So that's what we're going to use, and we're going to get these cross members centered. Once they're centered, we're going to use a 7/16 wrench to snug up those small hex bolts that attach the cross member to the roof rack foot. And then we'll have all the cross members where they need to be on the roof. So now we're gonna get the side plates installed. This side is the front because this contours towards the top of the windshield, and this is where the wind fairing connects up. It's gonna be easier with 2 people to do this. So we have Viet who stopped by. I just met this guy. He's just kind of a guy wandering around the neighborhood. No, he's actually a friend of Tom's. To affix the side plates to the cross member, we're gonna use these longer button head bolts with a flat washer. So we each got 2 in our hands right now. And then we're gonna fit this up. I'm gonna use a step stool because I'm shorter. And then it appears the proper slot to affix the side plate to the front cross member is this slot between these 2 smaller square holes. And then let's see where Viet is attaching his to the rear cross member. I'm gonna zip these in most of the way with my Milwaukee ratchet and a 4mm Allen socket, but I'm not gonna even get them snug. I want to be able to move this thing easily fore and aft. Okay, that's good enough. And then I'm gonna cinch up the ones in the back. So now we're gonna get the passenger side plate in place the same way. We'll get all the bolts started, but not even snug, so we can do some fine adjustment if we need to. All right, now that we have the side plates in position, we're gonna get the rest of the cross members in place. Where you install them and how many you install is gonna be personal preference. I'm sure some people might not install all the cross members that come with the Sherpa roof rack. We're gonna install them all, so here we go. We'll show you how to do one of them. Sherpa recommends getting one cross member as far forward as you can get to add some rigidity for the wind fairing. So we're gonna put the first one right up in front. Now I'm just gonna take most of the slack out and get them cinched up. Again, you wanna keep them loose so you can make some final adjustments when you got all the cross members in place. All right, we're gonna do the same thing and get the rest of the cross members onto the roof rack. The last thing we're gonna attach to the roof rack is the fairing, and to attach the fairing, we're gonna utilize our last cross member. What you'll wanna do is you'll wanna put the cross member right in front of the fairing, and this will give you a good idea of where to put the T-nuts in the channel, because you can see the holes you need to line up with. I'll slide them in just like we did with the other ones. Okay, and I'm just gonna eyeball this as close as I can to line them up. That looks good. These need to slide over a little bit. Okay, those are all fairly aligned. So now what you'll want to do is you'll slide the fairing over the cross member, and then hopefully you line them up fairly well. Okay, I'm gonna start with these middle ones, and then let's see where I'm at. Ooh, I did pretty good. Okay, let's see for the last ones here. A little bit off, so I have this screwdriver and I could just move them to where I need them to be. That's pretty good. There they are, they're all started. Before you tighten these up, you want to make sure the fairing is equal to the edge of the cross member, and then you could cinch them up with a 4mm Allen. All right, now we're going to get this connected. For the adjustment of the fairing on the front of the roof rack, you're going to want to bring the edge of the fairing equal to the edge of the side plate. So you wouldn't want it looking like that, and you wouldn't want it way back like that. You want to bring the edge of the rubber or plastic piece basically equal to the end of the side plate, and then you'll lock them in with the button head bolts.
Sweet, looks good.
Sherpa recommends anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch gap between the wind fairing and the roof line. You don't want the fairing to be resting up against the roof, because then you'll get some vibration when it's really windy. We right now have closer to like a 1/16 maybe. So we probably have to slide the whole roof rack a little bit forward to get just a little bit more of a gap, but we're almost looking pretty perfect, huh?
Yeah.
So Viet and I together slid the roof rack a little bit forward to get closer to 1/8 of an inch gap along this line, and it looks pretty good. So now what we're gonna do to lock it in place is everywhere there's a foot, we're gonna lock in the cross member at those feet. So now it won't be able to slide fore and aft anymore. Now that we have the roof rack all installed on the top of his rig, we're gonna start working on getting the boxes attached. It seems it's pretty darn easy to get these things attached. They have these T-brackets, and the T-brackets slide in to the box like so. And if the table wasn't in the way, it would go all the way in. And then you just slide the other one in. So the way these will attach to the cross member is the cross member also has slots on the side that you could put those T-nuts in, and then you could come in with a bolt washer and affix it to the cross member. So we're gonna get this up on top of the roof rack, and we're gonna figure out where we're gonna put it. Okay. So I'm gonna install the T-nut into the channel and get the other one in. Okay, and then now we have to try to get these aligned. And I think to help me, I'm gonna use this little Torx head screwdriver to push them in place and line up the bowl holes. I could see this being a little bit of a test of patience, but I don't know. It might be easier than I think. I can't see. I wasn't lined up. Actually, it's not that hard. As long as you have room to get in there with the bolt, you should be fine. All right, we got one box up there. We're gonna get the second box up there. Same technique. We were gonna attach that third box to basically completely fill up the roof rack, but we don't have enough brackets because this box is gonna be in this orientation on the back of the roof rack, and the 2 brackets we have isn't going to be enough. We actually need 4 brackets to properly attach it. They go in right here, so boom, boom, and then you would put 2 more in the back. Boom, boom. So Tom's got to get a couple more brackets, and then he also has to figure out how he's going to mount everything else. What we really already know is that if he wants to be able to get Max Trax boards up there and other stuff up there, one of these boxes is going to have to go. So he'll figure it out, and then we'll come back and we'll show you all the other things he mounted to the roof rack and how pretty it looks and blah, blah, blah. All right, we are back on another day. Ton has figured out what he wants to mount on his roof rack, and we're going to go through it with you right now. Let's get out to the truck. Ton decided to keep the 2 longer and shorter boxes on the front like you saw us mounting on the other day. We did some wiring for some lights. We ran the wiring from the engine compartment from a switch panel. We went up the windshield here with a KC wire hider, and then we brought the wiring up to this juncture right here, there's a line that goes across to the passenger side to power 2 lights. So on the driver's side, the wiring goes along here, and we wired up 2 of the Baja Design rock lights. The original plan was to mount 4 rock lights on either side, because you can see there's 4 spots where you can put them. But when we were shuffling the cross members around to make everything fit the way we wanted it to fit, this front cross member to mount the box gets in the way of one of the lights mounting here, so no light can go there. And then back here, we thought that the cross member to mount this water port was going to get in the way, but we might have been able to sneak in a 3rd light here. But at the time when we got together on another day, we decided to just mount 2 on each side. So we've got 4 lights wired up, 2 per side. This is the mount that's going to be able to mount the water port on this side, so he can use it to wash dishes or take a shower, whatever he wants. He's going to have a water port right here. Just like everything on this Sherpa roof rack, to mount the water port, you use T-nuts, and then you use some Allen head bolts, and it's mounted just like this. At the very back, you could see there's 2 mounts right here, and this is to mount the max tracks. So Ton, again, utilized a couple T-nuts per bracket with some Allen head bolts, and he mounted them right here. And then these mounts right here that bolt up to each of these brackets, you need 4 of them. You buy those from Max Tracks. So he has Max Tracks boards, so he's using Max Tracks mounts. On the driver's side, Ton is going to mount an ARB awning. So you need 2 brackets for that, and the brackets attached to the cross member, again, with a T-nut and a couple bolts. So if you look at right here, utilizing a couple T-nuts and these small bolts, he was able to affix the bracket right back here in the rear. And we mounted a second bracket right here, the same method, T-nuts and the small bolts. And finally, you can see that we have another 2 rock lights right here mounted in the center holes. In regards to these lights, they mount pretty darn easy. You mount the light to a metal bracket, and then the metal bracket mounts to the sides of the roof rack with a couple Allen head button head bolts and nuts on the back. Pretty simple. To give you a better idea of how we did the wiring, Ton has a switch panel right here, and on another job, we actually fabricated this bracket to where it would go right here. So you have an inline 60 amp fuse, and then you have the switch panel. The wires for the lights run from here. They go into some split wire loom, and then we ran the wires through this weather stripping that helps seal the hood to the engine compartment, and then the wires just run right through here underneath the hood and then straight into the KC wire hider up to the roof rack. This is a nice way to go if you don't want to have to run the wires into the cabin of the vehicle and then drill through the roof to run the wires to roof rack lights. I like this much better. I use the same technique on my 98 4Runner. All right, here's a final look of the roof rack with all the accessories installed. This is what the front looks like. Coming around the driver's side, Rome box, couple of rock lights. You have the water port hanging there. In the back, you have the Max Tracks boards mounted. Coming around to the passenger side, you've got the ARB awning mounted. And then you have the second Rome box. And here's a shot from up above to see what it looks like from an aerial view. You can see there's a little bit of room right here for Ton to be able to mount something else if he wants, maybe some roto packs or something. So he's got a little bit of spare room, but not a whole lot with those 2 big Rome boxes and the Max Tracks on there. All right, we are all done with this job. I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the Sherpa roof rack system. Not only is it well built and nice and light, so you don't have a bunch of extra weight up on top of your roof making your rig top heavy, I really like how modular it is. You can slide the cross members to where you need them to mount the things you want to mount. They make a multitude of different brackets so you can mount a lot of different things like you saw us mount, like the water port and rock lights, awnings, max tracks boards, shovels, high lift jack, partridge in a pear tree, kitchen sink. They pretty much make brackets for everything that you'd want to mount up on your roof rack. So I have to give 2 thumbs up to Sherpa for making a well-built and well-designed roof rack for Lexus GX470 owners. I'd like to thank TEQ Customs for sponsoring this video. That's where Ton got the roof rack from. They gave him a good deal on it. And that was the relationship that got this whole project going. When we were in Raleigh, North Carolina, Ton was checking out their shop, noticed that they had a roof rack for his GX470, talked to them, worked out a deal, got it shipped out to his place in San Jose, California. And then he also talked to Sherpa, who decided to sponsor this project also by hooking him up with some deals on the Rome boxes and giving him some deals on the bracketry to mount all the things he wanted to mount. So thank you, TEQ Customs. Thank you, Sherpa, for sponsoring this project. Now, if you're wondering, what did Ton do with all the other bracketry that he didn't use for this video? Because if you remember, we showcased a bunch of bracketry that he got from Sherpa for this job, and then realized that there's no way we're going to be able to put everything on there. It's just too much stuff. So Ton has plans to either put a Sherpa roof rack on his Lexus LX450 or his 80 series Land Cruiser, and he's going to utilize that Sherpa bracketry to mount stuff on that roof rack. So that will be another video coming to you at a future date. With all that said, we thank you for watching Toy at a Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean and special guest Ton. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell if you would like to know when we put up new content. Peace out, happy wrenching, sick mods, and sick Sherpa roof rack installs. Bye-bye.